Hello guys, welcome to Percy Fiction. So in this video, we will see, what if Percy read the Naruto was the son of Greek god and goddess? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Scroll of Hidden Truths. Percy Jackson bolted upright in his bunk, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool summer breeze flowing through cabin 3. The dream, vision, whatever it was, clung to his consciousness like sea foam to shoreline rocks. A boy with wild blonde hair and strange whisker-like marks on his cheeks had been fighting shadowy figures while energy the color of sunlight swirled around him. The boy had shouted words Percy couldn't understand, but the raw determination in his voice transcended language. "Not again," Percy muttered, running a hand through his disheveled black hair. For the third night in a row, the same boy had appeared in his dreams. Each time, the visions grew more vivid, more urgent. Percy glanced at his watch. 5:47 a.m. Too early to be awake, too late to try falling back asleep. He swung his legs over the side of the bed and padded to the saltwater fountain in the corner of his cabin. The morning light filtering through the windows cast the fountain's mist in a rainbow sheen. Percy tossed a golden drachma into the spray. "Oh Iris, goddess of the rainbow, show me Annabeth Chase." The mist shimmered, but instead of revealing Annabeth, it swirled chaotically. Before dissolving back into ordinary water droplets, the drachma clattered into the basin. "Great," Percy grumbled. "Even the goddess of rainbows is having technical difficulties." He dressed quickly and headed outside. Camp Half-Blood was just beginning to stir. A few early risers from the Apollo cabin jogged along the perimeter, their golden hair gleaming in the dawn light. Near the dining pavilion, satyrs were setting up tables while dryads emerged from their trees, stretching leafy arms toward the brightening sky. Percy made his way to the Athena cabin. If anyone could help make sense of these recurring dreams, it would be Annabeth. As he approached the cluster of buildings, he noticed something unusual, a faint blue glow emanating from the windows of cabin 6. He knocked softly on the door. When no one answered, he pushed it open and peered inside. Annabeth. The cabin was empty except for Malcolm, who sat at a desk surrounded by stacks of books, his back to the door. "Malcolm, everything okay?" Malcolm jumped, nearly knocking over an inkwell. "Percy, gods, you startled me." He hastily covered whatever he was working on with a sheet of paper. "Annabeth's at the big house with Chiron. Something about architectural plans for the new amphitheater." Percy nodded, trying to see past Malcolm to identify the source of the blue glow, which seemed to be coming from somewhere beneath the desk. "What's that light?" Malcolm's expression tightened. "What light? I don't see any light." Percy raised an eyebrow. "Seriously, the blue glow that's making your face look like you're underwater. It's nothing. Just a project. A project that's got you jumpy and secretive at 6 in the morning." Malcolm sighed, shoulders slumping. "Fine. Annabeth found something yesterday during cabin inspection. A hidden compartment under Daedalus' laptop case. There was this scroll inside. We've been taking turns trying to decipher it." Percy stepped closer. And it's weird, Percy. Like, really weird. It's written in ancient Greek, but there are symbols I've never seen before mixed in. Symbols that move, like, change position. No, like they're animated. Look." Malcolm moved aside, revealing a weathered scroll unfurled on the desk. True to his word, among the familiar Greek letters were strange spiral patterns and symbols that seemed to shimmer and flow like liquid. Percy leaned closer. As he did, the blue glow intensified, and one symbol, a spiral with a triangular mark, began pulsing. "Whoa." Percy reached toward it instinctively. "Don't touch it," Malcolm warned, but too late. As Percy's fingers brushed the parchment, the cabin disappeared. For a heartbeat, he found himself standing in a vast forest, massive trees stretching impossibly high into the sky. A stone monument loomed before him, carved with faces and topped with spiky blonde hair that matched the boy from his dreams. Then, just as suddenly, he was back in the Athena cabin, stumbling backward into a bookshelf. "Percy." Malcolm steadied him. "What happened?" "You went rigid for a second." Percy blinked, trying to process what he'd seen. I'm not sure. I saw a forest with trees bigger than skyscrapers. And faces carved into a mountain, like Mount Rushmore but different. Malcolm's eyes widened. That's what Annabeth described too. She touched it yesterday and saw something similar. Where is she now? The big house. Like I said, she wanted to talk to Chiron about. The door banged open, and Annabeth burst in, her blonde hair windswept and her gray eyes intense. Malcolm, I need to. She stopped when she saw Percy. Oh, you're here. Morning to you too, wise girl. Percy smiled, but his expression sobered when he saw the urgency in her face. What's wrong? Annabeth glanced at Malcolm, then back to Percy. Chiron just told me something concerning. About dimensional breaches. About what now? She crossed to the desk and carefully rolled up the scroll. We need to clean this cabin. Right now. Clean. Annabeth, what's going on? Percy asked. Cabin inspection in 30 minutes. And your cabin's on the list too, seaweed brain. She shoved the scroll into a drawer. Malcolm, can you finish cataloging the library? Percy, help me with these bunks. Malcolm nodded, clearly understanding something Percy didn't, and moved to the bookshelves. Annabeth grabbed Percy's arm and pulled him to the farthest bunk, lowering her voice. Chiron's acting strange. When I mentioned the scroll, he practically pushed me out of the big house. Said something about maintaining boundaries and not disturbing what was intentionally hidden. Hidden by who? That's just it. He wouldn't say. But Percy. She hesitated. He looked afraid. The concept of Chiron, their immortal teacher who had faced countless monsters and wars, being afraid of anything was deeply unsettling. So we're pretending to clean while actually discussing forbidden scrolls. Percy whispered. Stealthy. This isn't a joke. Whatever that scroll is, Chiron thinks it's dangerous. She began straightening the sheets on the bunk with quick, efficient movements. And you've been having those dreams, which might be connected. Percy froze. How did you know about my dreams? You talk in your sleep. Annabeth's cheeks colored slightly. Last night when we were at the campfire, you dozed off and started muttering about a whisker-faced kid and shadow warriors. Before Percy could respond, a conch horn sounded in the distance, signaling breakfast. We'll talk more later, Annabeth said. Meet me at the canoe lake after inspection. The morning passed in a blur of activity. Cabin inspection, which Percy's cabin barely passed, thanks to hastily stuffed clothes under his bed, breakfast. And a particularly intense capture the flag planning session with the Ares cabin. By the time Percy reached the canoe lake, the sun was high overhead, glinting off the water's surface. Annabeth was already there, sitting on the dock with her feet dangling above the water. She had the scroll in her lap, partially unrolled. I thought we were being cautious with that thing, Percy said, sitting beside her. I am being cautious, but we need to understand what we're dealing with. She pointed to a section of text. I've translated some of it. Listen to this. Beyond the veil of worlds, where the light of Olympus cannot reach directly. Our essences have found new vessels. The children born of crossed realms carry powers unimaginable to either world alone. Crossed realms. Like other dimensions. Annabeth nodded. The scroll talks about gods, our gods, traveling to another world. A world where people channel energy called chakra, instead of godly powers. Apparently, some gods stayed there long enough to have children. Percy frowned. So there are demigods in this other world. Wouldn't they know about Camp Half-Blood, or at least about their godly parents? That's the thing. The scroll suggests their divine heritage was deliberately concealed. Something about sealing divine essence within mortal vessels and histories rewritten to protect the balance. A chill ran up Percy's spine despite the warm summer air. The boy in my dreams, he had this energy around him. Golden, like sunlight, but also, I don't know, intelligent somehow. Like it was alive. Annabeth's eyes widened. Percy, what if? Her words were cut short by a tremendous splash as something erupted from the lake's center. Water sprayed in all directions as a figure rose, humanoid but definitely not human. It stood on the water's surface. A good 20 feet tall, with blue-green skin that rippled like the lake itself. Its eyes were empty whirlpools, and where a mouth should be, there was only a swirling vortex. What the Hades is that? Percy shouted, already on his feet, riptide transforming from pen to sword in his hand. Annabeth scrambled up beside him, hastily rolling the scroll. I don't know. It's not Greek, at least not any monster I've studied. The water creature let out a sound like a tsunami crashing against cliffs and lunged toward the dock, one watery arm extending into a blade-like appendage. Percy stepped forward instinctively, raising his hand. The lake responded to his will, currents shifting to push back against the creature. But instead of retreating, the monster's form simply absorbed the water Percy tried to control, growing larger. Percy, it's using your power against you, Annabeth shouted. The creature's arm slammed into the dock, splintering wood and sending both demigods flying backward onto the shore. Percy rolled to his feet, mind racing. If he couldn't use his water powers, he'd have to rely on swordplay. He charged forward, riptide slicing through the air. The celestial bronze blade connected with the creature's torso, and passed straight through, like cutting through normal water. The monster didn't even flinch. Conventional weapons aren't working, he called to Annabeth, who was frantically digging through her pack. Keep it distracted, she called back. Percy did his best, ducking and weaving as the creature sent blasts of pressurized water in his direction. Each time he dodged, the blasts hit trees or rocks behind him, leaving deep gouges in their surface. Whatever this thing is, it's not playing around, Percy yelled, rolling under another attack. From the corner of his eye, he saw other campers rushing toward the commotion. The Stoll brothers, Clarice with her electric spear, a few Apollo archers. But they were still too far to help. The monster formed both arms into massive hammers and brought them down simultaneously. Percy dove between them, the impact creating a crater on either side of him. He slashed at the creature's midsection again, this time concentrating on the feeling he got when controlling water, not to manipulate it, but to understand its nature. This time, riptide met resistance. The creature shrieked, a sound like steam escaping a pressure valve, as the sword carved a glowing line across its torso. That's it, Percy called out. It's not just water, it's some kind of energy. I can feel it now. Annabeth appeared at his side, clutching a small object. Percy, catch. She tossed him what looked like a smooth river stone with a Greek symbol etched into its surface. He caught it instinctively. What am I supposed to do with this? It's a focusing stone from the Hecate cabin. Channel your power through it. Percy didn't have time to question her. The monster had recovered and was reforming its AR-MS into what looked disturbingly like massive shuriken, throwing stars like he'd seen in martial arts movies, but composed entirely of whirling water. He gripped the stone in his left hand, riptide in his right, and closed his eyes for a split second, focusing on the familiar tug in his gut that came with using his powers. This time, instead of trying to control the water directly, he channeled the energy through the stone. The effect was immediate and startling. The stone grew hot in his palm, and Percy felt his connection to the water sharpen, becoming more precise. When he opened his eyes, thin strands of blue energy were connecting his body to the lake, to the moisture in the air, and to the creature. I can see its energy network, he said in amazement. It's like a circulation system, but for power instead of blood. The monster hurled its watery shuriken. Instead of dodging, Percy slashed riptide through the air while channeling his power through the stone. The blade left a trail of blue light that intercepted the projectiles, disrupting their spin and causing them to dissolve harmlessly. Percy, aim for the center of its chest, Annabeth called, now examining the unfurled scroll again. There's a core there, I can see it pulsing. Sure enough, with his enhanced perception, Percy could make out a denser concentration of energy in the creature's torso, a swirling nexus that seemed to direct the monster's movements. He charged forward, dodging another attack. The other campers had arrived now, their weapons having as little effect as Percy's initial attempts. Clary's electric spear passed through the creature without resistance, while arrows from the Apollo cabin simply sank into its watery form and disappeared. Everyone back, Percy shouted. I've got this. He leapt into the air, higher than should have been humanly possible, propelled by his newfound control. At the apex of his jump, he brought riptide down in a two-handed strike directly at the creature's core. Channeling every ounce of power he could through the focusing stone, the sword connected with the energy nexus, and for a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Then the creature exploded outward. A massive shockwave of water and blue energy that knocked everyone off their feet. Percy landed hard on the shore, soaking wet but uninjured. Where the monster had been, only a small whirlpool remained, quickly dissipating into calm water. Percy. Annabeth rushed to his side. "Are you okay?" He nodded, still gripping both sword and stone. What in Poseidon's name was that thing? Before she could answer, slow applause echoed across the lake. They turned to see Mr. D standing at the edge of the woods, wearing his usual leopard pattern Hawaiian shirt and looking supremely unconcerned. Well, the god of wine drawled. "It seems Peter Johnson has encountered his first chakra construct. How delightfully ahead of schedule." Chiron appeared beside him, his expression grave as he surveyed the damaged dock and the gathering of confused campers. "Mr. D," Chiron said quietly. "Perhaps this isn't the time for—" "Oh, it's precisely the time," Dionysus interrupted. "When dimensional boundaries start breaking down. The time for secrets is long past." He fixed his purple eyes on Percy and Annabeth. "Especially when certain demigods insist on meddling with things beyond their understanding." Annabeth clutched the scroll tighter. "You knew about this. About the other world." "Of course we knew." Dionysus rolled his eyes. "The gods have known about the shinobi realms for millennia. We just had the good sense to stay away, mostly." "Mostly," Percy repeated. Chiron stepped forward, his tail flicking nervously. This discussion would be better continued at the big house, away from prying ears. Percy looked around at the gathered campers, all staring with expressions ranging from confusion to excitement. Even Clarice looked intrigued rather than angry, which was saying something. "Fine," Percy agreed, "but I want straight answers. No more cryptic warnings or half-truths." Dionysus smirked. "Demanding, isn't he? Come along then, heroes. Time for a history lesson about the world beyond the veil, and why some doors should remain closed." The big house's rec room had been transformed. The ping-pong table was pushed against the wall, and in its place stood a raised platform with a three-dimensional image hovering above it, a perfect miniature of Earth, slowly rotating. "Holographic projection?" Annabeth asked, impressed despite the tension. "Hephaestus designed it," Chiron explained. "For situations like this." Percy, Annabeth, Grover, and Rachel Elizabeth Dare, who had been summoned from her cave, sat in chairs around the platform. Mr. D lounged on the couch, nursing a Diet Coke, while Chiron remained in his wheelchair form, looking uncharacteristically uncomfortable. "So," Percy said when everyone was settled. "Other worlds. Gods having kids in different dimensions. Water monsters that use chakra. Anyone want to start explaining?" Chiron sighed deeply. "The multiverse is vast, Percy. Our world, the world of Western civilization and Olympian gods, is just one facet of reality. There are others, many others, each with their own rules, their own powers, their own divine entities." Mr. D snorted. "Divine entities. Such a politically correct term for competitors." "Competitors." Annabeth leaned forward. "You mean other gods?" "In a manner of speaking." Chiron manipulated a control panel on his wheelchair, and the holographic Earth transformed, splitting into multiple overlapping spheres. Some worlds evolved with entirely different pantheons, the Norse, the Egyptian, and others. But some worlds developed without gods as we understand them. Instead, they harnessed other forms of power. The hologram zoomed in on one particular sphere that looked like Earth but with continents shaped differently. "The shinobi world," Chiron continued. A mention where humans learn to harness internal energy, chakra, to perform what we might consider godlike feats. "The boy in my dreams," Percy said. "He was from this world. The one with whisker marks." Chiron and Dionysus exchanged glances. "Yes," Chiron confirmed. "His name is Naruto Uzumaki. And he is significant." "Significant how?" Rachel asked, speaking for the first time. Her green eyes seemed to glow faintly, though not with the full power of the oracle. Dionysus sighed dramatically. "Oh, just tell them, Chiron. The boundary's already wearing thin. That water construct was just the beginning." Chiron nodded grimly. "Very well. Thousands of years ago, during what the shinobi world calls the time before hidden villages, several Olympian gods discovered passages between our dimensions. They were intrigued by this world where humans wielded powers similar to minor gods. They were bored and looking for new playgrounds, Dionysus corrected flatly. Some gods spent considerable time there, Chiron continued. Ignoring the interruption, they learned the ways of chakra, how it differed from and complemented their divine abilities. And some formed attachments with the people there. They had kids, Percy translated. Demigods in the shinobi world. Yes and no. Chiron's fingers tapped nervously on his wheelchair armrest. These children were different. The Combina, Tian of divine ichor and chakra created something new, power beyond what either world had seen before. It was destabilizing. Apocalyptically so, Dionysus added, crushing his empty can. The shinobi started worshipping these godlings, forming cults. The natural chakra systems of their world began warping. Zeus finally had to intervene. What did he do? Annabeth asked quietly. What Zeus Alwa? Ys does when faced with potential rivals, Dionysus said with a shrug. He tried to eliminate them. A heavy silence fell over the room. But he failed, Percy guessed. Chiron nodded. Not entirely by his own fault. The nature of the shinobi world made it impossible to simply destroy these demigod children. Their power had become intertwined with the chakra networks of the entire dimension. Destro, them would have collapsed both our worlds. So instead, Dionysus continued, a compromise was reached. The gods agreed to leave the shinobi world alone, and in exchange, the memory and divine essence of their children was sealed away, disguised as something else. As what? Rachel asked, her voice strangely distant. As tailed beasts, Chiron answered. Massive constructs of chakra, each containing the sealed divine essence of a demigod child. The people of that world were led to believe these were simply natural manifestations of malevolent chakra. The truth was hidden even from the children themselves. Percy's mind was racing. And Naruto, the boy from my dreams. He is the Jinchuriki, the human container, of the nine-tailed fox, the strongest of these constructs, Chiron explained. But the nine tails is not merely a chakra monster. It is the sealed divine essence of the child of Apollo and Athena, born in the shinobi world eons ago. Annabeth gasped. Apollo and Athena, but they've never, they don't. Different world, different rules, Dionysus said dismissively. Athena doesn't need brain children there. The mechanics of godly reproduction aren't important. What matters is that this Naruto boy essentially contains the power of a god within him, even if he doesn't know it. And now the seals are weakening, Chiron added gravely. That scroll you found, Annabeth, it's one of the keys. A record kept by Apollo himself. Its reappearance is no coincidence. Percy thought of the strange symbols on the scroll, how they seemed to move and pulse with life. So why am I dreaming about him? Why now? Rachel suddenly straightened in her chair, her eyes glowing green. When she spoke, it was with the tripled voice of the oracle. The veil between worlds grows thin as mist. Where sun and wisdom's child was sealed with a twist. The sea's sun shall cross the great divide, to awaken powers long denied. What was hidden in shadow and fox's roar, shall break its chains and be contained no more. She collapsed back into her chair, the glow fading from her eyes. Grover quickly moved to support her. Well, Dionysus said after a moment. That's inconvenient. It's a quest, Annabeth said, looking at Percy. You're meant to go to the shinobi world. Percy felt a familiar mixture of dread and determination settle in his stomach. To help Naruto discover his true heritage, or to prevent a catastrophe, Chiron said quietly. If Naruto fully awakens to his divine nature without proper guidance, the results could be disastrous for both our worlds. And this is happening because, Percy prompted. Dionysus sighed. Because some shinobi have been meddling with forces beyond their understanding. They've been extracting the tailed beasts from their hosts, not realizing they're actually unbinding ancient divine power. It's creating ripple effects across the dimensions. The water monster at the lake, Annabeth realized. That was chakra leaking into our world. Precisely, Chiron confirmed. And it will only get worse. Percy stood up, feeling the weight of yet another world-saving responsibility settling onto his shoulders. So how do I get there? To this shinobi world. Chiron wheeled over to a cabinet and unlocked it with a key from around his neck. From inside, he withdrew a small wooden box inlaid with silver symbols similar to those on the scroll. With this, he said, opening the box to reveal what looked like an ordinary kunai knife with strange markings wrapped around its handle. A transportation seal created by a shinobi who once visited our world. It's tied to a specific location in their dimension. Let me guess, Percy said. One-way ticket. Not necessarily, Chiron replied. But returns are complicated. The scroll contains instructions, which is another reason you'll need it. Annabeth stood as well. I'm going too. Absolutely not, Dionysus said firmly. The prophecy mentioned only the sea's son. Besides, sending a child of Athena to meet her half-brother from another dimension. Too messy. Half-brother. Annabeth looked stricken. Naruto would be my half-brother. In a manner of speaking, Chiron said gently. Though the connection is far more complex than typical divine lineage. Percy took Annabeth's hand. I'll be careful, and I'll find a way back. You always do, she said, squeezing his hand. But Percy, that world operates differently from ours. Your powers might not work the same way. The focusing stone, he remembered. It helped me see and manipulate the chakra. Chiron nodded. Keep it with you. It will help you channel your abilities in forms the shinobi world will recognize. When do I leave? Percy asked. Tonight, Chiron said, when the boundary between worlds is thinnest. The summer solstice approaches in both dimensions, creating a natural alignment. As if to emphasize his point, the lights in the big house flickered, and a distant rumble shook the foundations. Terrific, Percy muttered. No pressure or anything. Night fell over Camp Half-Blood, bringing with it an unnatural stillness. No wind stirred the trees, no insects chirped. Even the ocean beyond the shore seemed to hold its breath. Percy stood at the top of Half-Blood Hill, next to Talia's pine tree. He wore his standard camp shirt and jeans, with a backpack containing ambrosia, nectar, the scroll, and a few other essentials. Riptide was in his pocket, the focusing stone hung on a cord around his neck, and the marked kunai knife was strapped to his thigh in a leather holster. Beckendorf had quickly fashioned for him. I still think this is a terrible idea, Annabeth said, standing beside him. Sending you alone into another dimension. Would you prefer if Clarice went with me? Percy joked weakly. I'd prefer if the gods handled their own interdimensional messes for once, she replied, but there was no real heat in her words. She'd been studying the scroll all afternoon, copying sections and translating what she could. I've written down everything I could decipher about chakra manipulation. Apparently, it's similar to how you control water, but more structured. Structured how? They use hand signs to focus it. Different combinations for different effects. She demonstrated, her fingers forming unfamiliar patterns. This is tiger. This is ram. There are 12 basic signs. Percy tried to mimic one and failed miserably. I think I'll stick with instinct. Just be careful, she said, giving up on the impromptu lesson. And if you meet my half-brother, tell him. What? She shook her head. I don't know. That's the problem. What do you say to someone who doesn't even know they're part god? Speaking from experience, sorry, is a good start. Percy smiled, but it faded quickly. I'll find a way to break it to him gently. Chiron approached, his horse half making no sound on the grass. It's time, Percy. The alignment is reaching its peak. Percy nodded, his mouth suddenly dry. He'd been on quests before, faced gods and titans and monsters, but traveling to another dimension entirely. That was new, even for him. Remember, Chiron instructed, focus on the kunai as you activate it. Visualize passing through the veil between worlds. Your destination will be a place called the Forest of Death, outside a village known as Konoha. Forest of Death. Sounds charming, Percy remarked. The shinobi have a flair for dramatic naming, Chiron admitted. Once there, seek out a woman named Tsunade. She is the leader of the village, Hokage, and one of the few who knows fragments of the truth about the tailed beasts. Percy took a deep breath and gripped the kunai. Any last tips for not getting killed in Ninja Land? Trust your instincts, Chiron said. And remember that while the physics may be different, the hearts of people remain the same across all worlds. Find allies, Percy. You'll need them. Annabeth suddenly grabbed him and pulled him into a fierce kiss. When she pulled back, her gray eyes were stormy with emotion. Come back to me, seaweed brain. That's an order. Yes, ma'am, he replied, his voice hoarse. Percy stepped away from them both. To the very crest of the hill. He drew the kunai from its holster and held it before him, focusing on the strange markings that seemed to shimmer in the moonlight. "Here goes nothing," he muttered, and channeled his power into the blade. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the markings began to glow blue, faint at first, then with increasing brightness until they outshone the moon. The air around Percy thickened, becoming viscous like water. He felt resistance, as if swimming against a powerful current. He pushed harder, drawing on his connection to the sea, to all liquid. To the very moisture in the air around him. The focusing stone against his chest grew warm, then hot. Blue energy spiraled from it, connecting to the kunai in intricate patterns that reminded him of the symbols on the scroll. The world began to stretch and distort. Percy heard Annabeth call his name, but her voice seemed to come from underwater, distorted and distant. His vision tunneled, the lights of Camp Half-Blood stretching into long streamers of color. Then, with a sensation like breaking through the surface after a deep dive, Percy tore through the fabric of reality. He was falling, tumbling through absolute darkness. No up, no down, just the void and the faint blue glow of the kunai still clutched in his hand. His stomach lurched as if he were on the world's most terrifying roller coaster. Just as suddenly as it began, it ended. Percy crashed through thick foliage and slammed into solid ground, the impact knocking the breath from his lungs. The kunai spun away, its glow fading to nothing. For several moments, he simply lay there, gulping air and waiting for the world to stop spinning. Gradually, his senses returned. He was in a forest, but unlike any forest he'd seen before. The trees were enormous, their trunks wider than cars, their canopies hundreds of feet overhead. Strange sounds echoed through the undergrowth, clicks and hisses and low growls that deaf. A nightly didn't belong to any woodland creature he knew. Percy staggered to his feet, retrieving the now ordinary-looking kunai and slipping it back into its holster. His pack had survived the journey, though it was now covered in dirt and leaves. The focusing stone still hung around his neck, cool once more. "Forest of Death," he murmured, looking around at the alien landscape. At least they named it accurately. Something large moved in the shadows to his right. Percy instinctively reached for Riptide, uncapping the pen to reveal its celestial bronze blade. The familiar weight in his hand was reassuring. A massive centipede, easily 20 feet long, emerged from between two massive tree roots. Its mandibles clicked together, dripping with some viscous fluid that sizzled when it hit the ground. "Okay, definitely not in Kansas anymore," Percy muttered, raising his sword. The centipede charged with surprising speed. Percy rolled to the side, slashing at its segmented body as it passed. Riptide cut through the creature's exoskeleton, drawing a spray of greenish ichor. The monster shrieked, an unnervingly human sound, and whipped around for another attack. This time, Percy stood his ground. As the centipede lunged, he concentrated on the focusing stone, trying to access the same perception he'd used against the water monster at camp. Instantly, he could see it, a network of blue energy flowing through the creature. Similar to but distinct from the life force of monsters in his world. He sidestepped the attack and drove Riptide into what appeared to be a nexus of energy near the creature's head. The blade sank deep, and the centipede convulsed once before collapsing, its many legs twitching. Percy pulled his sword free, grimacing at the greenish slime coating the blade. Giant insects. Great. What's next? Ninja squirrels. As if in answer, a metallic object whistled past his ear and thunked into the tree behind him. Percy whirled to find a kunai knife, similar to his transpi. Ortation tool but more utilitarian, embedded in the bark, with a small piece of paper attached to it that was beginning to sizzle. His demigod instincts screamed danger. Percy dove away just as the tag exploded, sending splinters of wood in all directions. 3 figures dropped from the trees above, landing in a triangle formation around him. They wore dark clothing and green vests, with metal headbands bearing a stylized leaf symbol. 2 men and a woman, all regarding him with cold suspicion. "That's far enough," the woman said in accented but understandable English. "Identify yourself and state your business in Konoha territory." Percy slowly straightened, keeping Riptide visible but lowered. "My name is Percy Jackson. I'm looking for someone named Tsunade. It's important." The 3 exchanged glances. A foreigner seeking the Hokage directly. One of the men said. Suspicious. Especially one who appears out of nowhere in a flash of light, the other added. In the middle of training ground 44, Percy decided honesty was probably his best approach. Look, I know this sounds crazy, but I'm from another world. I need to speak with Tsunade about Naruto Uzumaki and the nine-tailed fox. The reaction was immediate. All three tensed, hands moving to weapons pouches. Restrain him, the woman ordered sharply. That information is classified. He's either a spy or a threat. Wait, Percy raised his hands. I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm trying to prevent it. Save it for Ibiki, the first man said, forming rapid hand signs. Percy felt a sudden shift in the air, like pressure building before a storm. His instincts took over. He grasped the focusing stone and channeled his power through it, creating a shield of condensed moisture from the humid forest air. The shinobi's TTACK, a blast of compressed air, hit the shield and dissipated. All three ninja looked momentarily surprised. Water style without hand signs. The woman murmured. Percy didn't wait for them to recover. He slashed Riptide in a wide arc. Not to hit them but to create distance. Then he bolted into the underbrush, running as fast as his demigod reflexes would allow. He heard pursuit immediately, swift movement through the trees above him. These weren't ordinary humans. They moved with preternatural speed and coordination. Percy zigged and zagged between massive trunks, trying to make himself a difficult target. A shadow passed overhead. Percy looked up just in time to see one of the male shinobi descending toward him, hands flashing through signs. The man inhaled deeply, then exhaled a massive fireball that engulfed the path ahead. Percy skidded to a halt, trapped between advancing ninja and a wall of flame. He gripped the focusing stone again, reaching out to sense any water nearby. To his relief, he felt a significant source just beneath the forest floor, groundwater, flowing in underground streams. Concentrating, he pulled upward, drawing the water to the surface in a surging geyser had doused the flames and created a momentary smokescreen of steam. Using the cover, Percy changed direction, heading toward what he hoped was the edge of the forest. He'd made it perhaps 50 yards, when something wrapped around his ankles, sending him crashing to the ground. He looked down to see his legs entangled in what appeared to be living shadows. Shadow possession complete, a bored voice announced from behind him. Percy turned his head to see a young man with his hair tied up in a spiky ponytail, hands formed in an unfamiliar sign. This wasn't one of the three who had initially confronted him, this was someone new. Troublesome, the newcomer sighed. Foreign intruders are such a drag. More shinobi appeared, surrounding Percy completely. Among them was a tall, silver-haired man, wearing a mask that covered the lower half of his face. His headband was tilted to cover his left eye. Interesting technique, the masked man said, studying Percy with his single visible eye. Not quite water style as we know it. Who are you really? Percy tested the shadow binding and found it completely immobilizing. His sword arm was frozen in mid-position, Riptide still clutched in his hand. Like I told the welcome committee. My name is Percy Jackson. I'm here about Naruto Uzumaki and something that affects both our worlds. He looked directly at the masked man, who seemed to be in charge. I need to speak with Tsunade. It's about the true nature of the tailed beasts. The masked man's eye widened slightly. Shikamaru, maintain the shadow possession. Everyone else, stand down but stay alert. He approached Percy carefully. My name is Kakashi Hatake. And you, Percy Jackson, have just said several things that very few people should know about. I'm aware, Percy replied. That's why I need to talk to Tsunade. Preferably before more giant bugs try to eat me or your friends decide to use me for target practice. Kakashi studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Release him, Shikamaru, but be ready to restrain him again if necessary. The shadow binding retracted, flowing back to the ponytailed shinobi like water returning to a stream. Percy slowly got to his feet, Cap'n G Riptide and returning it to his pocket. That's an unusual weapon, Kakashi observed. Not chakra-based, yet it affects chakra networks. Where did you get it? It's a long story, Percy said. One I'd rather tell once. To people who can actually do something about the situation. Kakashi seemed to consider this, then nodded. Very well, we'll take you to the Hokage. But I warn you, if this is some kind of deception. You'll find Konoha's hospitality quickly exhausted. Fair enough, Percy agreed. Lead the way. As they set off through the forest, Percy couldn't help but feel he'd just passé. His first test in this strange new world. Now came the hard part. Convincing its leaders that everything they knew about their most powerful weapons was based on a cosmic cover-up. Just another day in the life of a demigod. The village hidden in the leaves, Konoha, was unlike anything Percy had ever seen. Built within and around massive trees, its architecture blended natural and constructed elements in ways that would have made Annabeth's architectural heart soar. Buildings spiraled up trunks, bridges connected canopies, and water elements flowed throughout the village in elaborate channels. But what struck Percy most was the energy of the place. Not just the visible bustle of people going about their lives, but the underlying current of power, chakra, that seemed to flow through everything. With his enhanced perception through the focusing stone, he could see it pulsing beneath the surface of reality like a living circulatory system. Kakashi and his team escorted Percy through the village, drawing curious glances from civilians and knowing looks from other shinobi. They approached a large circular building with the kanji for fire emblazoned above its entrance. The Hokage's office, Kakashi explained. Lady Tsunade is expecting us. You sent word ahead, Percy asked. Something like that, Kakashi replied cryptically, tapping his headband over his covered eye. They climbed several flights of stairs and were admitted to a spacious office dominated by a desk piled high with scrolls and documents. Behind it sat a woman who appeared to be in her 30s, with blonde hair. A small purple diamond mark on her forehead, and an expression that suggested perpetual irritation. Despite her youthful appearance, something in her eyes spoke of far greater age. So, she said without preamble, you're the dimensional traveler who knows about the Nine Tails. Percy blinked in surprise. You're taking this remarkably well. This isn't the first interdimensional incident I've dealt with, Tsunade replied dryly. Though it's been decades since the last one. She gestured to a chair across from her desk. Sit. Explain. Quickly. Kakashi and the others took positions around the room as Percy sat down. He took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. I'm Percy Jackson, son of Poseidon, god of the sea in my world. I'm from a dimension where the Greek gods are real, and they sometimes have children with mortals, demigods like me. He paused, gauging her reaction. When she merely nodded for him to continue, he pressed on. Recently, I discovered that thousands of years ago, some of our gods visited this world and had children here too. But those children were different, more powerful, because their divine essence mixed with chakra. And this relates to the tailed beasts. How? Tsunade prompted, her amber eyes sharp. The tailed beasts aren't what you think they are, Percy said carefully. They're not natural chakra constructs. They're the sealed divine essence of those god children, disguised and hidden away because their power was too dangerous. A heavy silence fell over the room. Percy could feel the tension radiating from the shinobi guards. That's quite a claim, Tsunade finally said. Do you have any evidence? Percy reached into his pack and withdrew the scroll. This contains records kept by Apollo, one of our gods who visited your world. It explains how the sealing was done and why. Tsunade took the scroll carefully, examining the symbols with narrowed eyes. These markings, they're similar to some of our most ancient sealing techniques, but different. She looked up sharply. Why reveal this now, after all this time? Because the seals are weakening, Percy explained. In my world, we're experiencing chakra leakage, monsters formed of water and energy that shouldn't exist there. And according to our sources, it's because someone here has been extracting the tailed beasts from their hosts. Tsunade's face darkened. The Akatsuki. I have already captured several Jinchuriki and removed their tailed beasts. Without understanding what they're really unbinding, Percy added. It's creating instability between our worlds. If it continues, especially if they capture the Nine Tails, both dimensions could collapse. And Naruto? Kakashi asked quietly from his position by the wall. You mentioned him specifically. Percy met his gaze. Naruto contains the Nine Tails, which is actually the sealed essence of a child of Apollo and Athena, god of the sun, music, and healing, and goddess of wisdom and strategic warfare in my world. That makes him special. Even among Jinchuriki. Special how? Tsunade pressed. If he fully awakens to his divine heritage, he could become more powerful than any Jinchuriki has ever been. Powerful, enough to potentially restore balance, or destroy both worlds entirely. Tsunade leaned back in her chair, a complex mix of emotions crossing her face. I always knew there was something different about that brat, she murmured. Almost to herself. The way he heals, his ridiculous stamina, his strategic unpredictability in battle. Traits of Apollo and Athena, Percy confirmed. Enhanced by generations of chakra evolution. And you're here to what? Take him back to your world. Tsunade's tone had turned dangerous. Percy shook his head quickly. No, I'm here to help him understand what's happening to him. To guide him through the awakening that's already begun, whether anyone wants it or not. He leaned forward. Where is he now? Training with Jiraiya, one of our Sannin, Kakashi answered. They left the village several weeks ago. Percy frowned. We need to find him. Soon. The prophecy I received before coming here suggested time is running short. Prophecy. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. In my world, prophecies are real, glimpses of possible futures delivered through oracles. Percy recited the verses Rachel had spoken. The sea's son is me. The child of sun and wisdom is Naruto. Tsunade's eyes narrowed in thought. Then, with a decisive movement, she pressed a button on her desk. Shizune, get me Jiraiya on the communication network immediately. Priority 1. A woman's voice responded through an intercom. Yes, Lady Tsunade. The Hokage fixed Percy with an evaluating stare. If what you're saying is true, this changes everything we thought we knew about the tailed beasts and the very foundation of our shinobi world. I know it's a lot to take in, Percy acknowledged. You have no idea, she muttered. The 5 great nations have built their military power around the Jinchuriki for generations. Finding out they're actually containing god-children from another dimension. She laughed humorlessly. It would cause chaos, which is why discretion is essential, Kakashi added. At least until we understand the full implications. A knock at the door interrupted them. Shizune, a dark-haired woman holding a small pig, entered with a concerned expression. Lady Tsunade, I can't reach Master Jiraiya through any of the usual channels. His last reported location was near the Valley of the End, but that was 3 days ago. Tsunade frowned. That's not like him. Send an ambush squad to... She was cut off by a tremendous crash from outside, followed by shouts of alarm. Percy was on his feet instantly, hand going to his pocket where Riptide waited. What now? Tsunade growled, moving to the window. In the distance, at the village perimeter, a plume of smoke was rising. Even from this distance, Percy could see flashes of combat, and something else that made his blood run cold. A distortion in the air, like heat waves but darker, more malevolent. That's it, he said grimly. That's what happened at Camp Half-Blood before the water monster appeared. A dimensional breach. Tsunade barked orders, and the shinobi in the room disappeared in blurs of movement. She turned to Percy. If this is related to what you've told me, I need you with me. Your knowledge might be crucial. Percy nodded. Let's go. As they raced through the village toward the disturbance, Percy couldn't help thinking that his quest had just become considerably more complicated. He'd expected to have time to find Naruto, to explain things carefully. Instead, it seemed the collision of worlds wasn't waiting for anyone's convenience. Somewhere in this world, Naruto Uzumaki was ABO, to face a heritage beyond anything he could imagine. And Percy was determined to reach him before chaos, or worse, found him first. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. Sons of Different Seas. Percy crouched behind a fallen tree trunk, surveying the chaos at Konoha's eastern perimeter. The dimensional breach had grown in the few minutes it took them to arrive, a writhing tear in reality that resembled black fire eating away at the air itself. Through it, Percy glimpsed fractured images of familiar places, the strawberry fields of Camp Half-Blood, the gleaming white columns of Olympus, the dark depths of the sea. It's getting worse, he muttered to Tsunade, who knelt beside him. The worlds are bleeding into each other. Konoha shinobi fought desperately against creatures emerging from the rift, the water constructs Percy had faced at camp, but something new. Humanoid figures with misshapen limbs and faces like Greek theater masks, wielding weapons that shifted form with every swing. What are they? Tsunade asked, her hands already glowing with medical chakra as she treated a wounded ninja who'd been dragged to their position. I'm not sure, Percy admitted. They look like incomplete manifestations. Parts of monsters from my world, but warped by passing through the breach. A creature with a bull's head and serpentine lower body charged toward their position. Percy uncapped Riptide and leapt forward to intercept it. As he engaged the monster, he noticed something odd. His reflexes seemed enhanced beyond even his demigod abilities. Each movement felt lighter, more precise. The bull serpent swung a massive axe. Percy dodged with a backflip that sent him 20 feet into the air, far higher than should have been physically possible. What the? He gasped as he came down, icing through the monster as he descended. It dissolved into particles of golden dust and blue chakra that swirled away into the breach. Kakashi appeared beside him in a swirl of leaves. Your body is adapting to our world's physics, he explained. Chakra naturally enhances physical capabilities here, and you seem to be absorbing it instinctively. Percy felt it now, the subtle network of energy flowing through his body. Different from but complementary to his demigod powers. It feels incredible. Focus, Tsunade commanded, joining them at the front line. We need to close that breach before more creatures come through. I'm not sure we can close it completely, Percy said, studying the rift. But maybe we can stabilize it temporarily. He touched the focusing stone around his neck. I need water. A lot of it. Tsunade nodded to a shinobi with long brown hair and pale, pupil-less eyes. Neji, guide him to the eastern reservoir. Kakashi, coordinate the defense. I'll organize medical support. The young shinobi, Neji, led Percy swiftly through the trees. Whatever you're planning, make it quick, he said tersely. Those things are getting stronger with each new wave. They arrived at a large, circular pool fed by an underground spring. Percy immediately felt the familiar tug in his gut, the connection to his element strengthened by the focusing stone. Stand back, he warned Neji. Then plunged his hands into the water. Unlike in his world, where controlling water was as natural as breathing, here he felt resistance. The water had its own chakra network, a complex system didn't immediately recognize his authority. Percy closed his eyes, concentrating on harmonizing his power with the native energy. Come on, he muttered. Work with me here. Gradually, he felt the water respond, first reluctantly, then with growing enthusiasm, as if curious about this strange new presence commanding it. The entire reservoir began to glow with blue-green light as Percy infused it with both his demigod power and the chakra he was rapidly learning to channel. What are you doing? Neji asked, his special eyes, Byakugan, Percy would later learn, activated to observe the chakra flow. Making a patch, Percy grunted, sweat beading on his forehead with the effort of maintaining control. Water connects all things, even dimensions. With a sharp upward gesture, Percy sent the entire contents of the reservoir skyward in a massive column. The water twisted and expanded, forming into a giant sphere that hovered over the village. Then, with a pushing motion, he directed it toward the breach. The water engulfed the rift, surrounding the tear in reality with a swirling barrier of liquid. Percy concentrated harder, visualizing the structure of both worlds, the boundaries between them, and how they should align. The focusing stone grew hot against his chest, channeling energy in both directions. Hold, he whispered, feeling as if he were trying to press together the edges of a wound in the skin of reality itself. The water sphere began to contract, forcing the breach to shrink with it. Creatures still emerging were pushed back or dissolved. The golden blue particles were absorbed into the liquid, strengthening its structure. With a final surge of effort, Percy clapped his hands together. The water collapsed inward, and the breach sealed with a thunderous sound like a massive door slamming shut. The remaining water fell as rain over the battlefield, extinguishing fires and washing away the last traces of the invading creatures. Percy staggered, suddenly exhausted. Neji caught him before he could fall. Impressive, the Hyuga prodigy said, genuine respect in his voice. But you've used an enormous amount of chakra. How are you still conscious? Demigod stamina, Percy managed with a weak smile. Comes in handy. As they made their way back to Tsunade and the others, Percy noticed the strange looks he was receiving from the village shinobi. D of his abilities had clearly spread quickly. Tsunade was directing medical teams when they arrived. She took one look at Percy's condition and frowned. Get him to the hospital. Chakra exhaustion can be serious for someone not trained to handle it. I'm fine, Percy protested. Just need a minute. That wasn't a suggestion, Tsunade said firmly. Sakura, take him. A pink-haired kunoichi around Percy's age appeared beside him. She had bright green eyes and wore a red outfit with black gloves. Yes, Lady Tsunade. Come on, let's get you checked out. Too tired to argue further, Percy allowed himself to be led away from the battlefield. As they walked through the village, he noticed the sphere of water had left everything drenched, buildings, streets, and very irritated-looking villagers. Sorry about the impromptu shower, he said to Sakura. She gave him a sideways glance. You're really from another dimension. One where gods exist. Yeah, though to be fair, they mostly exist to make our lives complicated. That earned him a small smile. Sounds familiar. Our gods may be different, but powerful beings causing problems is pretty universal. They reached the hospital, where Sakura efficiently checked him into a room and began a medical assessment. Her hands glowed green as she moved them over his body. Your chakra network is unusual, she commented. It's like it's still forming, adapting to our world. But your physical stamina is off the charts. Side effect of being half god, Percy explained. Though I've never been able to jump 20 feet in the air before. That was new. Chakra enhances natural abilities here, Sakura said. And from what I can tell, your natural abilities were already enhanced. The combination is, well, I've never seen anything quite like it. She completed her examination and handed him a small pill. Soldier pill. It will help restore your chakra faster. Percy swallowed it and immediately felt a surge of energy, though not enough to completely eliminate his fatigue. Thanks. So, you're a medical ninja. I'm Lady Tsunade's apprentice, she said with pride. Both in medical ninjutsu and combat techniques. Combat techniques? You mean you can fight and heal? Sakura's eyes narrowed dangerously. Is that surprising? Percy held up his hands. No, not at all. It's impressive. Where I come from, Apollo is god of both medicine and archery. Healing and fighting often go together. Her expression softened. Apollo. You mentioned him before. He's supposedly one of Naruto's divine parents. According to what we learned, yes. Percy studied her reaction. You know Naruto well. He's my teammate. Her voice carried complicated emotions, fondness, exasperation, and worry all mixed together. We've been through a lot together. He's important to me. Before Percy could respond, the door opened, and Kakashi entered, accompanied by a tall, broad-shouldered man with long white hair tied in a ponytail and red markings on his face. Percy Jackson, the white-haired man said, his voice deep and commanding. I'm Jiraiya, one of the legendary Sannin and Naruto's current teacher. I believe we have much to discuss. Jiraiya, it turned out, had not been out of communication by accident. He had been investigating strange energy fluctuations near the Valley of the End, fluctuations that, in retrospect, were early signs of the dimensional weakening. I've suspected for years that the tailed beasts were more than simple chakra constructs, he explained as they sat in a private room within the Hokage Tower. Their intelligence, their distinct personalities, it never quite fit the official history. Percy, now recovered enough to function normally, leaned forward. So you're not surprised by what I've told you. Surprised by the specifics, perhaps. But not by the general concept. Jiraiya's expression was thoughtful. The Sage of Six Paths, who supposedly created the tailed beasts by splitting the 10 tails, always struck me as suspiciously similar to certain divine figures in ancient texts. Where's Naruto now? Percy asked. Safe, at a secure training location about half a day's journey from here. Jiraiya's eyes narrowed. The question is whether he should remain there or return to the village. He needs to know the truth, Percy insisted. The dimensional breaches will continue, possibly get worse, until he understands his heritage and learns to stabilize it. And what if understanding his heritage unleashes something we can't control? Tsunade countered. Naruto already struggles with containing the Nine Tails power. If that power is actually divine essence, all the more reason he needs guidance, Percy argued. Look, I've been where he is, discovering I'm not just human, that I have a her. Eatage and abilities beyond what I thought possible. It's overwhelming, but it's worse when you're facing it alone. Kakashi, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Percy's right. Naruto deserves to know. And practically speaking, having him here under observation is safer than leaving him in the field where the Akatsuki might find him. Tsunade considered this, then nodded reluctantly. Jiraiya, bring him back. Discreetly. We need to control how this information is disseminated. What about the breach? Percy asked. I stabilized it temporarily, but it could reopen, possibly elsewhere. I'll assign teams to monitor potential weak points around the village, Tsunade decided. Kakashi, I want you to work with Percy to develop contingency plans. Your Sharingan might help understand how his powers interact with our world. There's something else, Jiraiya said gravely. During my investigation, I picked up intelligence that Orochimaru is on the move. His spies were asking questions about unusual chakra phenomena. The mood in the room darkened immediately. Orochimaru? Percy asked. The third Sannin, alongside Tsunade and myself, Jiraiya explained. A rogue ninja obsessed with obtaining power and immortality. If he learns about the dimensional breaches and the true nature of the tailed beasts, he'll try to harness that power for himself, Tsunade finished grimly. And he has the knowledge and lack of ethics to be genuinely dangerous. Wonderful, Percy muttered, as if we didn't have enough problems. Get some rest, Tsunade told him. Tomorrow, we'll begin preparing for Naruto's return and whatever comes with it. Percy woke before dawn in the apartment he'd been assigned. It was sparse but comfortable, with basic furnishings and a small balcony overlooking a quiet street. For a moment, disorientation washed over him. The unfamiliar ceiling, the subtle differences in how light and air felt in this world. His mind drifted to Camp Half-Blood, to Annabeth and his friends. Were they worried? How much time had passed there? Dimensional travel apparently didn't come with a user manual explaining temporal relativities. Unable to fall back asleep, Percy and decided to explore the village in the quiet pre-dawn hours. The streets were mostly empty, with only a few shopkeepers setting up for the day and the occasional shinobi patrol moving across rooftops. Percy found himself drawn to a training ground, an open area with wooden posts, a small stream, and surrounding trees. The focusing stone around his neck seemed to pulse gently, as if responding to the ambient chakra. Curious about how his abilities would work now that he'd had time to rest and adapt, Percy approached the stream. He reached out with his senses, feeling the water in a new way, not just as his father's domain, but as a network of energy patterns that he could influence. With a fluid motion, he drew a sphere of water from the stream and held it hovering above his palm. Unlike in his world, where the control felt instinctive and direct, here it required a different kind of concentration, less commanding, more collaborative, as if he and the water were partners in a dance. Percy experimented, shaping the water into various forms, a sword, a shield, a spiraling dragon that wound through the air around him. Each transformation came easier than the last as he adjusted to the new paradigm. Impressive control without hand signs, a voice observed from behind him. Though your technique lacks efficiency. Percy turned to find a young man about his age watching from the edge of the training ground. He had pale skin, dark hair with a bluish tint, and cold, assessing eyes. He wore a high-collared shirt with a small fan symbol on the back. You must be Percy Jackson, the newcomer continued. The dimensional traveler everyone's talking about. Word travels fast, Percy commented, letting the water dragon disperse into droplets that glittered in the rising sun. And you are Sasuke Uchiha. The name was delivered with the confident expectation that Percy should recognize it. Percy didn't, but something about Sasuke's manner reminded him of certain demigods at camp, the ones with famous godly parents who expected deference based on lineage alone. Nice to meet you, Percy said neutrally. You're up early. I could say the same. Sasuke approached, studying Percy with unsettling intensity. I wanted to see for myself what kind of person claims to be from another dimension and knows secrets about the tailed beasts. Not claims. Is. Percy met his gaze steadily. And I'm not here to cause trouble. Just to help prevent it. By telling Naruto he's part god. Sasuke's tone made it clear what he thought of that idea. The idiot can barely handle being a Jinchuriki. Divine heritage will just make him more reckless. Percy frowned. You know Naruto well. Something complicated flashed across Sasuke's face. Rivalry, resentment, and something deeper that might have been grudging respect. We were teammates, he said finally. Before I left the village. Left? You mean? I defected. Sasuke's expression dared Percy to judge him. I had my reasons. I've recently returned under provisional terms. Percy absorbed this, reading between the lines. So you're on probation, and you're worried about how Naruto's new status might affect the power balance between you. Sasuke's eyes narrowed dangerously. You don't know anything about me or my goals. Maybe not, Percy admitted. But I know something about rivalry and complicated friendships. And about discovering you have power you never asked for. Spare me the philosophical bonding. Sasuke's hand moved to the sword at his waist. I came to evaluate you myself. If you're going to influence Naruto's development, I need to know what you're capable of. Percy recognized the challenge for what it was. Part of him, the part that had matured through years of quests and battles, knew he should decline, avoid unnecessary conflict. But another part, the part that had never backed down from a challenge, especially from someone with Sasuke's attitude, couldn't resist. All right, Percy said, uncapping Riptide. Let's see what you've got. Sasuke's eyes widened slightly at the sight of the sword expanding from a pen, then narrowed with interest. No chakra signature, yet clearly magical. Interesting. Without further warning, Sasuke blurred into motion, far faster than any normal human should be able to move. Percy barely brought Riptide up in time to block the strike from Sasuke's katana. The impact jarred Percy's arm, but he held firm, pushing back with strength enhanced by both his demigod heritage and the ambient chakra his body was absorbing. Sasuke leapt away, his eyes now glowing, red with 3 black tomo spinning in each iris. Sharingan, Percy heard Kakashi's voice explain from the sidelines. The copy ninja had appeared silently to observe. A bloodline ability that allows him to perceive movement in extreme detail and copy techniques. Now that's just unfair, Percy muttered, adjusting his stance. Sasuke attacked again, this time with a combination of sword strikes and kicks that forced Percy on the defensive. Each movement was precisely calculated, testing Percy's reflexes and adaptability. Percy found himself falling into the rhythm of combat, his body responding to the different physics of this world. He jumped higher, moved faster, his reflexes sharpened beyond what he was accustomed to. The focusing stone grew warm against his chest, helping him channel and direct the unfamiliar energies. Sasuke suddenly leapt back, forming rapid hand signs. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. A massive sphere of flame erupted from his mouth, hurtling toward Percy. Acting on instinct, Percy reached out to the nearby stream, pulling a wall of water between himself and the fire. The two elements collided in a hissing cloud of steam. Using the cover, Percy concentrated on a new idea. If chakra was energy that could be shaped by will, perhaps he could combine it with his natural affinity for water in ways he hadn't tried before. As the steam cleared, Percy stood with Riptide now encased in a shimmering blue aura. Water spiraled around the blade, not just clinging to it but infused with it, creating a longer, broader edge of liquid that moved like a living thing. Suk's eyes widened slightly, the first hint of genuine surprise he'd shown. Water style. Celestial current, Percy improvised, feeling the power flow through him in a new way. He charged, swinging the enhanced sword. Sasuke blocked with his own blade, but the water extension continued past the physical collision, slicing through the fabric of his sleeve. Sasuke disengaged quickly, reassessing. You adapt quickly, he acknowledged. But how do you handle this? The air around Sasuke's hand began to crackle with electricity. A chirping sound filled the air as lightning chakra concentrated in his palm, forming what looked like a ball of electric current. Chidori, Kakashi commented from the sideline. His signature technique. Be careful, water conducts electricity. Thanks for the physics lesson, Percy called back. Though the warning was valid. This wasn't like fighting sea monsters or Greek mythological creatures. The rules were different here. Sasuke charged, the lightning attack extended toward Percy like a spear. Percy knew he couldn't block it directly, water against lightning was a losing proposition. Instead, he did something unexpected. As Sasuke closed in, Percy drove Riptide into the ground and released his control of the water surrounding it. Instead, he focused on the moisture in the air, flash freezing it into a shield of ice between them. The Chidori struck the ice barrier with explosive force. The ice cracked but held long enough for Percy to roll aside, yanking Riptide from the ground as he moved. As Sasuke's momentum carried him forward, Percy swept his leg in a low kick, a move he'd learned from Clarice during Capture the Flag games. Surprisingly, it connected. Sasuke, focused on his lightning attack, hadn't anticipated the simple physical counter. He tumbled but recovered with incredible agility, flipping backward to create distance. Enough, Kakashi called, stepping between them before Sasuke could launch another attack. This was supposed to be an evaluation, not an all-out battle. Sasuke's Sharingan faded back to normal black eyes, though the intensity of his gaze remained. He's better than expected, creative, unpredictable. He sheathed his sword, like Naruto, but with actual strategy. Percy wasn't sure if that was a compliment or an insult. He capped Riptide, returning it to pen form. You're pretty impressive yourself. That lightning technique packs a punch. Sasuke studied him for a moment longer, then turned to leave. When Naruto returns, tell him I want a full report on his so-called divine abilities. I won't fall behind, just because he lucked into another power-up. As Sasuke walked away, Kakashi sighed. Don't take it personally. That's practically effusive praise by his standards. Charming guy, Percy commented. He and Naruto are friends. It's complicated, Kakashi admitted. Rivals, friends, almost brothers at times. Sasuke left the village to pursue power from Orochimaru, the rogue Sannin we mentioned. Naruto spent years trying to bring him back, finally succeeding just a few months ago. And now Sasuke's worried that Naruto becoming even more special will push them further apart, Percy guessed. Kakashi gave him an appraising look. You're more perceptive than you let on. Percy shrugged. I've dealt with my share of complicated rivalries and prophecy-chosen heroes. It comes with the demigod territory. Speaking of which, Kakashi said, his tone turning serious, there's something you should know about Naruto's divine heritage that we haven't discussed in the larger meetings. What's that? Kakashi glanced around, confirming they were alone, then lowered his voice. The fourth Hokage, Naruto's father in this world, knew. Percy blinked in surprise. Knew what? That Naruto had divine essence. Not the full story, but enough. When he sealed the Nine Tails into his newborn son, he noticed something unusual about the interaction between the beast's chakra and Naruto's own. He left encoded notes that only a few people have ever seen. And you're one of them. Kakashi nodded. He was my teacher. Before he died, he asked me to watch over Naruto, to help guide him when certain developments occurred. What kind of developments? Spontaneous healing beyond even Jinchuriki norms. Intuitive understanding of complex seals. Moments of tactical brilliance that seem to come from nowhere. Kakashi listed them off. All traits that align with what you've described about Apollo and Athena's domains. Percy absorbed this information, so Naruto's father knew he was special beyond being a Jinchuriki. But didn't know exactly why. Correct. He theorized that the Nine Tails itself was more than it appeared to be, that it contained some kind of ancient power or knowledge that would gradually influence Naruto's development. He wasn't wrong, Percy said. Just missing the interdimensional context. Kakashi nodded. The fourth wanted Naruto to be seen as a hero, to be treated with respect for containing the Nine Tails. But the village feared what they didn't understand. So instead of being honored, Naruto was isolated, Percy guessed, feeling a pang of sympathy. Feared. For a power he didn't ask for and didn't understand. Yes. Kakashi's visible eye crinkled with what might have been regret. For many years, Naruto had no one. No family, few friends. It shaped him, made him determined to earn recognition. To prove his worth. Percy thought about his own life. Difficult at times, certainly, but he'd always had his mother, and later, friends at camp who understood what he was going through. The idea of facing that burden alone. When will he arrive? Percy asked. By nightfall, if Jiraiya's message is accurate. Kakashi started walking toward the village center, gesturing for Percy to follow. In the meantime, Lady Tsunade has called a meeting to discuss security protocols for potential further breaches. As they walked, Percy noticed villagers watching him with a mixture of curiosity and wariness. News of the dimensional traveler had clearly spread. "They're not sure what to make of you," Kakashi commented, noticing Percy's awareness of the attention. "We don't get many visitors from other dimensions." "I get that a lot, even in my world," Percy said with a wry smile. "Being a demigod tends to make people nervous." "Being different always does," Kakashi agreed. "It's something you and Naruto have in common." The security meeting was held in an underground chamber beneath the Hokage Tower, a spacious room with walls inscribed with ceiling formulas and a large table displaying a three-dimensional map of Konoha and its surroundings. Tsunade presided, with various shinobi squad leaders in attendance. Percy recognized a few faces from the previous day's events: Neji Hyuga, Shikamaru Nara, and several others whose names he hadn't yet learned. Based on Percy's information and our own analysis of yesterday's breach, Tsunade began, "We've identified 7 potential weak points where dimensional tears are most likely to occur." She indicated points on the map, which glowed red in response to her touch. "Each location will have a response team stationed nearby, led by a Jonin with specific containment protocols." She nodded to a serious-looking man with a beard who was smoking a cigarette. "Asuma, your team will cover the western perimeter." As Tsunade assigned teams to locations, Percy studied the map, noticing patterns in the distribution of the weak points. "They're forming a spiral," he realized aloud, interrupting the briefing. "With the center point being the Uzumaki clan compound," Tsunade finished, looking troubled. "Yes, we noticed that as well. It can't be coincidence. The Uzumaki were known for their sealing techniques," Kakashi explained to Percy. "They had special chakra that was particularly effective for containing powerful entities. Like tailed beasts," Percy said, understanding. "Or sealed divine essence. So Naruto's connection to this world isn't just through his father. His mother's clan had a role in managing the divine chakra boundary, which makes him uniquely positioned to either stabilize or completely destabilize the situation," Shikamaru observed, his intelligent eyes assessing Percy. "Troublesome. What about defense against these creatures that come through?" a fierce-looking woman with red eyes asked. "Conventional weapons seemed ineffective yesterday." Percy stepped forward. "They're hybrids. Heart monster from my world, heart chakra construct from yours. To defeat them, you need to disrupt both aspects simultaneously." He explained the technique he'd discovered during the battle, using the focusing stone to perceive and target the energy networks within the creatures. Quote, "I can work with your weapons specialists to develop methods that might be effective," he offered. "Combining celestial bronze, the material my sword is made from, with chakra infusion could create weapons capable of properly damaging them." Tsunade nodded. "Tenten from Team Guy specializes in weapons. Kakashi, arrange for her to work with Percy after this meeting." As the discussion continued, Percy became aware of a subtle vibration from the focusing stone against his chest. It grew warmer, pulsing with increasing urgency. "Something's happening," he interrupted, drawing everyone's attention. "The stone, it's reacting to something." Before anyone could respond, a young shinobi burst into the room. "Lady Tsunade, another breach is forming at Location 3, the Eastern Forest Clearing." "Already?" Tsunade rose sharply. "Deploy response teams immediately. Percy, Kakashi, with me." They raced through the village and into the forest beyond, moving with chakra-enhanced speed that still amazed Percy. When they arrived at the clearing, the scene was chaotic. A swirling vortex of darkness had opened in the air, smaller than yesterday's breach but growing steadily. "It's different," Percy called to Tsunade as they approached. "The energy signature is wrong. Unlike the previous breach, which had felt like a natural tear between dimensions, this one seemed deliberate. Engineered. The edges were too precise. The swirling patterns too structured. Someone's forcing it open," Kakashi said, coming to the same conclusion. From the other side, or this side, came a smooth, chilling voice from the tree line. A pale figure stepped into view, a man with long black hair, yellow snake-like eyes, and an aura of malevolence that made Percy's skin crawl. He wore beige garments with a thick purple rope belt, and his face bore markings around his eyes that resembled a snake's scales. "Orochimaru," Tsunade spat, her hands already forming into fists glowing with chakra. Lady Tsunade, always a pleasure. Orochimaru's voice was silky, almost pleasant, which somehow made it more disturbing. And Kakashi Hatake. And this must be the dimensional traveler I've heard so much about. Percy Jackson, son of Poseidon. Percy tensed, hand moving to his pocket where Riptide waited. You seem well informed. Information is power, Orochimaru replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. And I make it my business to acquire both. More shinobi had arrived now, forming a perimeter around the clearing. Orochimaru seemed unconcerned by the show of force. What do you want, Orochimaru? Tsunade demanded. Are you responsible for this breach? Responsible? No. Taking advantage? Absolutely. He gestured toward the swirling vortex. A fascinating phenomenon, these dimensional tiers. They offer such possibilities. They're dangerous, Percy countered. They're destabilizing both our worlds. Change often requires a period of destabilization, Orochimaru said dismissively. Besides, I am more interested in what's coming through than the breach itself. As if on cue, the vortex pulsed, and a figure emerged, a woman with long dark hair and ancient Greek armor. Percy's blood ran cold as he recognized her. Bellona, he muttered, Roman goddess of war. But something was wrong. The goddess's form flickered, as if not fully materialized. Her expression was vacant, her movements jerky and unnatural. Not quite, Orochimaru corrected with obvious satisfaction. A shade, an echo of divine essence drawn from the space between dimensions. Neither fully goddess nor fully chakra construct, but something I can control. He held up a small orb glowing with purple energy. As he manipulated it, the Bellona shade moved corresponding to his gestures. You have no idea what you're meddling with, Percy warned, uncapping Riptide. The celestial bronze blade glowed in the presence of the divine shade. On the contrary, Percy Jackson. Orochimaru's smile widened. I understand perfectly well. Divine essence. Godly power. The very force that the Sage of Six Paths harnessed to create ninjutsu itself. With a flick of his wrist, Orochimaru sent the Bellona shade charging toward them, a spectral spear materializing in her hands. Percy met her charge, Riptide clashing against the ghostly weapon. Though semi-corporeal, the spear carried substantial force behind it, driving Percy back several steps. Careful, he called to the others. She might not be fully here, but she still has a portion of divine strength. Kakashi moved in to support Percy, his hand crackling with lightning chakra. Lightning blade, he called, driving the attack toward the shade. The electricity passed through the shade's form, disrupting it momentarily but not destroying it. The figure reassembled itself, wielding twin short swords in a distinctly Roman fighting style. Meanwhile, Tsunade engaged Orochimaru directly, her chakra-enhanced punches cratering the ground as the snake Sanin dodged with unnatural flexibility. You've gone too far this time, she growled, pressing her attack. Experimenting with divine essence. Have you lost what little sanity you had left? Always so short-sighted, Tsunade, Orochimaru replied, his neck extending impossibly as he weaved around her attacks. The power of the gods has been locked away in this world for millennia, disguised as tailed beasts. I'm simply claiming what should have been ours all along. Percy found himself fully engaged with the Bellona shade, which fought with the skill of a goddess of war, even in its diminished state. He channeled chakra through the focusing stone, enhancing Riptide's ability to affect the divine construct. Kakashi, he called, target the connection between the shade and Orochimaru's control orb. Kakashi nodded in understanding. As Percy drove the shade back with a particularly powerful thrust, Kakashi revealed his Sharinganai and focused on the purple energy tethering the shade to Orochimaru's orb. Water Dragon Jutsu, he called, forming rapid hand signs. A massive dragon formed from water vapor in the air, coiling around the energy tether and disrupting its flow. The Bellona shade faltered, its movements becoming less coordinated. Percy seized the opportunity, driving Riptide through the center of the shade's form while channeling both his demigod power and chakra through the blade. Return to your proper realm. The shade dissolved into particles of light, drawn back into the vortex with a sound like distant thunder. Orochimaru hissed in frustration, leaping away from Tsunade's devastating punch that shattered the tree behind where he had stood. A temporary setback. The breach remains, and there are many more divine echoes to harvest. Not if I close it first, Percy declared, turning his attention to the vortex. Unlike the natural tear from yesterday, this engineered breach responded differently to his attempts to seal it. The water he summoned from a nearby stream seemed to evaporate before it could make contact with the swirling darkness. Your conventional methods won't work on my creation, Orochimaru taunted. This breach is stabilized by divine essence itself, a fragment I've already collected. Percy's mind raced. If divine essence was keeping the breach open, perhaps divine essence could close it. He looked down at Riptide, then at the focusing stone around his neck. Kakashi, buy me some time, he requested, then turned to Tsunade. I need to try something risky. If it works, the breach will close. If not, well, things might get worse. Tsunade gave him a hard look, then nodded. Do what you need to do. We'll handle Orochimaru. As Kakashi and other Konoha shinobi engaged Orochimaru and his reinforcements who had appeared from the tree line, Percy knelt beside the breach. Stabbing Riptide into the ground before him, he closed his eyes, concentrating on his connection to his father's realm. The sea was distant in this world, but water existed everywhere, and through water. He could still feel the echo of Poseidon's domain. Lord Poseidon, he murmured, not quite a prayer but a focusing technique. Your son needs a bit of your power right now. The focusing stone grew hot against his chest, beginning to glow with sea-green light. Percy felt a familiar tug in his gut, but different, deeper, more primal, as if reaching across dimensional bounda. Rise to touch the essence of his divine heritage. Water condensed from the air around him, forming a swirling cocoon. But this water was different. It glowed with the same sea-green light as the focusing stone. Infused with a hint of divine power, Percy directed this empowered water toward the breach, not trying to force it closed as before, but instead tracing the edges, defining the boundary between dimensions. The water clung to the perimeter of the vortex, gradually stabilizing its wild fluctuations. What are you doing? Orochimaru demanded, noticing the change in the breach's behavior. Fighting divine with divine, Percy answered through gritted teeth, the strain of channeling even this echo of godly power taking its toll. With a final surge of effort, Percy clapped his hands together, and the water collapsed inward, drawing the edges of the breach with it. The vortex imploded with a thunderclap of displaced air, leaving nothing but a faint shimmer that quickly faded. Orochimaru let out a frustrated hiss. Impressive, son of Poseidon, but this is merely the beginning. He made a hand sign, and his body began to melt into the ground. We'll meet again soon, when the true prize arrives. Stop him, Tsunade ordered, but Orochimaru had already disappeared, leaving only a disturbed patch of earth. Percy sagged, drained from the effort. Kakashi helped him to his feet. You closed it, the copy ninja observed. Different technique this time, had to improvise, Percy explained wearily. Orochimaru was using divine essence to keep it open, so I needed a counter of the same type. Tsunade approached, her expression grave. He knows about Naruto. That's what he meant by the true prize. We need to intercept Jiraiya and Naruto before they reach the village, Kakashi said urgently. If Orochimaru gets to them first, I'll go, Percy volunteered, straightening despite his fatigue. I need to meet Naruto anyway, and I can recognize divine essence manifestations if Orochimaru tries to ambush them. Tsunade hesitated, then nodded. Take Sakura and Sasuke with you. Team 7 reunited might help ease Naruto into accepting what you have to tell him. And what exactly should I tell him? Percy asked. The whole truth from the start. Or ease him into it. Use your judgment, Tsunade advised. You've been through a similar revelation yourself. What would you have wanted to hear? Percy thought about his own discovery of his demigod heritage, the confusion, the fear, the sense of both burden and possibility. The truth, but with context. And with assurance that he's not alone in facing it. Then that's your approach, Tsunade said decisively. Depart within the hour. I'll have Sakura and Sasuke meet you at the East Gate. As the cleanup from the breach incident began, Percy found a quiet moment to gather his thoughts. He was about to meet someone who, like him, straddled the boundary between mortal and divine, human and God. Someone who didn't yet know the full truth of his heritage or the weight of responsibility it carried. Percy fingered the focusing stone, which had cooled once more. No pressure, he muttered to himself. Just tell a guy he's part Greek god and that the monster sealed inside him is actually his own divine essence. What could possibly go wrong? The journey to intercept Jiraiya and Naruto took them northeast through dense forests that gradually gave way to rocky terrain. Sakura led the way, with Percy following and Sasuke bringing up the rear, a formation that Percy suspected was as much about keeping him under observation as it was about tactical advantage. So you two have known Naruto for a long time? Percy asked as they leapt from tree branch to tree branch, a mode of travel that still felt surreal to him despite his rapidly adapting abilities. Since we were assigned to Team 7 at age 12, Sakura explained. 4 years now, though Sasuke was away for much of that time. Sasuke made no comment, his face impassive. What's he like? Percy pressed. Beyond the official file I was given. Sakura considered the question. Naruto is loud, unpredictable, stubborn to the point of insanity. A fond smile crept onto her face. But also the most loyal friend you could ever have. He believes in people even when they don't believe in themselves. He's an idiot, Sasuke contributed unexpectedly. But an idiot who somehow manages to change everyone around him. People who meet him aren't the same afterward. Percy nodded, recognizing the description. Sounds like a few demigods I know. Javi, divine blood tends to make you a catalyst for change, whether you want to be or not. They traveled in silence for a while, making good time across the rugged landscape. According to their intelligence, Jiraiya and Naruto had been near the northeastern border, investigating reports of Akatsuki movement, and were now returning along a route that would take them through a narrow valley between two mountain ranges. As they approached the valley, Sakura signaled for them to stop. We should be careful from here. This area is perfect for an ambush. Agreed, Sasuke said, his Sharingan activating as he scanned the surroundings. There's residual chakra on those cliff faces. Someone's been setting traps. Percy closed his eyes, focusing on his other senses. The focusing stone helped him attune to the energy patterns around them. There's water underground here. A lot of it, like an aquifer or underground river. That's not on any of our maps, Sakura said with a frown. It's deep, but it's definitely there. Percy opened his eyes. If we need an escape route or tactical advantage, I could bring it to the surface. Sasuke nodded, accepting the information without comment. We should split up. Sakura, take the high route along the western ridge. I'll move through the valley floor. Percy, he was interrupted by a massive explosion from further up the valley. The ground shook beneath their feet, and a plume of smoke rose into the sky. That's about where Jiraiya and Naruto should be, Sakura said urgently. Move, Sasuke ordered, already sprinting toward the disturbance. They covered the distance in minutes, coming upon a scene of battle. The narrow valley had been transformed into a crater, with scorched earth and shattered boulders scattered across the landscape. In the center, two figures stood back to back, surrounded by what appeared to be humanoid snakes with metallic scales. One was a tall man with long white hair, Jiraiya, Percy presumed. The other was a short, figure with spiky blonde hair and an orange and black outfit. Even from a distance, Percy could see the whisker marks on his cheeks that matched the boy from his dreams. Naruto Uzumaki. As they watched, Naruto formed a hand sign, and multiple copies of himself appeared in puffs of smoke, perfect duplicates that immediately engaged the snake creatures. Shadow Clone Jutsu, Sakura explained to Percy. One of Naruto's specialties. Jiraiya, meanwhile, had summoned a large toad wielding a sword, which was clearing a path through the enemies. Those aren't normal summons, Sasuke observed, his Sharingan studying the snake creatures. Their chakra is wrong. Contaminated somehow. Orochimaru, Percy guessed. He must have used the divine essence he collected to enhance his snake summons. Without further discussion, they launched themselves into the fray. Sasuke moved with blinding speed, his sword crackling with lightning as he cut through multiple enemies. Sakura's fists glowed with Hakra as she delivered earth-shattering punches that sent snake creatures flying. Percy uncapped Riptide and charged forward, the celestial bronze blade proving particularly effective against the divinely enhanced summons. Each strike caused them to dissolve into particles of light and scales. Percy Jackson, I presume. Jiraiya called out as Percy fought his way to the center of the battle. Your timing is impeccable. Special delivery from Tsunade, Percy replied, ducking under a snake's lunge and slicing it in half. Thought you could use some backup. Sakura, Sasuke, Naruto shouted, his face lighting up at the sight of his teammates. Then his eyes fell on Percy, widening with recognition. You, Percy faltered mid-strike. You know me, I've seen you in my dreams. Naruto exclaimed, fighting with a glowing sword against monsters. There was no time to process this revelation as another wave of snake creatures surged forward. These were larger, with multiple heads and what ared to be Greek symbols etched into their scales. Orochimaru is combining chakra constructs with creatures from your world, Jiraiya said to Percy as they fought side by side. He's trying to create vessels that can channel divine essence. That's not good, Percy understated, parrying a strike from a snake's fanged mouth. These are like prototypes. If he perfects the technique, he'd have an army of pseudo-divine soldiers. Jiraiya finished grimly. Naruto, meanwhile, had created even more shadow clones, each forming swirling spheres of blue energy in their palms. Rasengan, they cried in unison, driving the spiraling chakra balls into their opponents. Percy watched in amazement as the technique tore through the snake creatures, completely disrupting their physical forms. There was something about the Rasengan that seemed familiar. The spiraling energy pattern reminded him of the symbols on the scroll. We need to end this quickly, Sasuke called out, rejoining them after clearing his section of enemies. There's a larger force approaching from the north. I can sense them. I've got an idea, Percy said, remembering the underground water source. Everyone get ready to move to higher ground on my signal. He drove Riptide into the earth and focused on the vast reservoir beneath them. Using both his demigod powers and the chakra techniques he was rapidly developing, Percy sent his awareness deep into the ground, connecting with the hidden water. Now, he shouted, yanking Riptide upward in a pulling motion. The ground beneath them trembled, then split open as a geyser of water erupted from below, rapidly filling the valley floor. The remaining snake creatures were caught in the deluge, their bodies dissolving as the water, infused with Percy's power, neutralized the divine chakra hybrid energy animating them. Naruto and the others leapt to safety on higher rocks, watching in awe as the valley transformed into a temporary lake. That was awesome, Naruto exclaimed, his blue eyes wide with excitement. How did you do that? Are you a water-style user? But you didn't use hand signs. Percy climbed up to join them, sheathing Riptide. It's complicated, he said with a smile, finding Naruto's enthusiasm infectious despite the circumstances. I'm Percy Jackson, and you must be Naruto Uzumaki. The one and only. Naruto grinned, giving Percy a thumbs up. Future Hokage of the Hidden Leaf Village. Despite the danger they were still in, Percy couldn't help but like him immediately. There was something genuinely bright about Naruto, a quality that seemed to radiate from him like sunlight. Apollo's domain, Percy thought. It's already part of him, whether he knows it or not. We should move, Jiraiya interrupted, scanning the horizon. Orochimaru won't give up that easily. And we're still half a day's journey from the village. There's a cave system nearby that's not on standard maps, Sasuke suggested. We can take shelter there while we plan our next move. As they made their way to the caves, Percy found himself walking alongside Naruto, who was bursting with questions. So you're really from another dimension? With gods and stuff? That's what Pervy Sage told me. But he says crazy things all the time, so I wasn't sure if he was serious. Pervy Sage? Percy asked, amused. He means me, Jiraiya sighed from ahead of them. A disrespectful nickname that unfortunately stuck. But yeah, I am, Percy confirmed. A world where the Greek gods are real and sometimes have children with mortals. People like me. So you're, what, half god? Nah. Ruto looked fascinated rather than skeptical. Demigod is the technical term. My father is Poseidon, god of the sea. That explains the water powers. Naruto nodded as if this made perfect sense. So cool. Can all demigods do stuff like that? It depends on their divine parent, Percy explained. Children of Athena are incredibly strategic and wise. Apollo's kids are great archers and healers. Ares' children are natural warriors. Naruto absorbed this information with surprising ease. And you came here because? Percy exchanged a glance with Jiraiya, who gave a subtle nod. That's Someth. We need to discuss when we're somewhere secure. It's about you, Naruto. And the Nine Tails. Naruto's expression sobered immediately. What about it? Let's get to safety first, Jiraiya interjected. Some conversations shouldn't happen in the open. The cave Sasuke led them to was well hidden, its entrance concealed behind a waterfall. Inside, it opened into a spacious chamber with smaller tunnels branching off in various directions. Evidence of previous use. Old campfire sites, storage niches carved into the walls, suggested it had served as a shinobi waystation in the past. As Sakura and Sasuke secured the perimeter, Jiraiya created a small fire in the center of the main chamber. The dancing flames cast long shadows on the rock walls as they gathered around it. No sign of pursuit for now, Sakura reported as she rejoined them. But we should still keep watch. I'll take first shift, Sasuke volunteered, positioning himself near the cave entrance. With the immediate danger addressed, all eyes turned to Percy. Naruto sat cross-legged across the fire from him, his expression unusually serious. All right, he said, we're safe. Now tell me what's going on with the Nine Tails. Percy took a deep breath. What do you know about the origin of the tailed beasts? Naruto frowned in concentration. They were created by the Sage of Six Paths, right? By splitting the 10 tails into 9 separate beings. That's the story that's been passed down, Jiraiya confirmed. But Percy brings information that suggests there's more to it. Percy nodded. The tailed beasts aren't just chakra constructs, Naruto. They're sealed divine essence, the power of children born to Greek gods who visited this world thousands of years ago. Naruto stared at him. Divine essence, godly power, Percy clarified. When gods from my world came here, they had children with people from your world. But these children were too powerful. The combination of divine ichor and chakra created beings of immense power. To prevent catastrophe, their essence was sealed and disguised as the tailed beasts. And the Nine Tails? Naruto asked quietly, his hand unconsciously moving to his stomach where the seal was located. Percy met his gaze directly. It contains the sealed essence of a child of Apollo and Athena, god of the sun, music, and healing, and goddess of wisdom and strategic warfare. Silence fell over the cave. Naruto's expression was unreadable, his blue eyes reflecting the firelight. So, what does that mean for me? He finally asked. It means you're connected to that divine heritage, Percy explained gently. The seal your father placed on you was designed to gradually allow you to assimilate aspects of the Nine Tails' power. But what's really happening is you're slowly integrating divine abilities that were sealed away eons ago. Divine abilities. Naruto looked down at his hands as if seeing them for the first time. Like what? Your healing factor, for one, Jiraiya interjected. It's always been faster than even normal Jinchuriki healing. And your stamina, your reserves of chakra, they're beyond what should be possible. Your strategic unpredictability in battle, Sakura added from where she sat. The way you come up with plans that shouldn't work but somehow do. And your affinity for the Rasengan, Jiraiya continued. A spiraling sphere of chakra that, coincidentally, resembles the ancient symbols associated with Apollo. Naruto absorbed this information, his brow furrowed in thought. Percy was impressed by his calm consideration. It wasn't the reaction he had expected from someone often described as impulsive and emotional. Is that why I've been having those dreams? Naruto finally asked, looking directly at Percy. Dreams about another world, about people fighting monsters with bronze weapons. Percy nodded. The dimensional boundaries are weakening. Your divine connection is becoming more active, reaching across to my world. Just as I've been dreaming about you. So what happens now? Naruto asked. Am I supposed to go to your world? Or what? No, Percy assured him. You belong here, but you need to learn to consciously access and control these emerging abilities. The involuntary manifestations are causing instability between our dimensions. And that's bad. Very. Jiraiya confirmed. The breach we encountered today was just the beginning. Orochimaru is trying to exploit the situation, harvesting divine essence for his own purposes. Which means you're in even more danger than before, Sakura added worriedly. It's not just Akatsuki after you now. Naruto was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. Then, to Percy's surprise, he started to laugh, a genuine, amused chuckle that gradually grew louder. What's so funny? Percy asked, bewildered. It's just. Naruto tried to compose himself. All my life, I thought I was a monster because of the 9 tails. The village hated me for it. And now you're telling me I'm actually part god. He shook his head in disbelief. Talk about a plot twist, believe it. His reaction wasn't what Percy had expected, but it was refreshingly direct. No denial, no existential crisis. Just honest surprise and a hint of ironic amusement. You're taking this remarkably well, Percy observed. Naruto shrugged. After everything I've been through, finding out I've got some god blood in me isn't the weirdest thing. Besides, he added with a grin, it explains why I'm so awesome. Jiraiya chuckled. Humble as ever, I see. So how do I do it? Naruto asked, suddenly eager. How do I access these divine abilities? That's what we need to figure out, Percy said. In my world, demigod abilities usually manifest naturally, but your situation is unique. The divine essence isn't dire. CTLY in your bloodline, it's sealed within you, mixed with the 9 tails chakra. The seal is the key, Jiraiya mused. Minato designed it to gradually allow Naruto to draw on the 9 tails chakra. If we could modify it to specifically filter the divine aspects, without releasing the 9 tails itself, Sakura added cautiously. I might be able to help with that, Percy offered. The focus, Stone I use helps me perceive and manipulate the boundary between divine power and chakra. It could provide a template. From his position by the cave entrance, Sasuke spoke up. We should get moving at first light. This conversation can continue at the village, where it's more secure. Sasuke's right, Jiraiya agreed. We've lingered here long enough. Get some rest, everyone. Tomorrow will be challenging. As the others settled in for the night, Percy found himself unable to sleep. He moved to the cave entrance, joining Sasuke on watch duty. You didn't seem surprised by any of this, Percy observed quietly. About Naruto's connection to divine essence. Sasuke's expression remained impassive. The Dobi always had power that defied explanation. Finding out it has divine origins just confirms what I already suspected. He's not normal, even by shinobi standards. Does it bother you, Percy asked, that he has this additional source of power? Sasuke's eyes flickered to the Sharingan momentarily, then back to normal. Power is power. Its source is irrelevant. What matters is how it's used. Percy studied him thoughtfully. You know, in my world, there's a son of Hades, god of the underworld, named Nico. He reminds me a bit of you. Intense, powerful, carries a lot of weight on his shoulders. Your point. He learned that true strength isn't about having the most destructive abilities. It's about finding your own path, even when the world expects something else from you. Sasuke was silent for a long moment. You don't know anything about my path. No, Percy agreed. But, I know something about walking a difficult road and feeling like you have to do it alone. Before Sasuke could respond, a subtle vibration ran through the cave. Percy's focusing stone grew warm against his chest. Something's coming, he warned, uncapping Riptide. Sasuke tensed, hand moving to his sword. Not from outside, from below. The ground beneath them began to shift and crack. Percy shout, a warning to the others just as the cave floor gave way, revealing a massive serpent tunneling up from below, a snake far larger than any natural creature, with scales that gleamed like metal in the firelight. Wake up, Percy yelled, leaping back as the serpent's massive head emerged fully into the cave. We're under attack. The others were on their feet instantly, weapons ready. The giant snake rose higher, revealing a figure standing atop its head, Orochimaru, his pale face illuminated by an eerie glow emanating from a crystal clutched in his hand. How predictable, the Sannin said with a cold smile. Seeking shelter in a cave system I've used for years. Did you really think I wouldn't know every entrance and exit? Orochimaru. Naruto growled, his eyes flashing red momentarily. What do you want? Why, you, of course. Orochimaru replied smoothly, or more specifically, the divine essence you contain. I've spent decades seeking the secrets of immortality and power. Imagine my delight when I discovered that godhood itself was within reach all along. He held up the glowing crystal. This shard contains divine essence I've already harvested from one of the lesser-tailed beasts. A mere fraction of what the Nine Tails holds, yet enough to begin the transformation. As he spoke, Orochimaru's appearance began to change. His skin took on a golden sheen, and an aura of power radiated from him that made the air itself feel heavy. He's infusing himself with the divine essence, Jiraiya realized with horror. Trying to become a god. Not trying, Orochimaru corrected. Succeeding. The first phase, at least. He made a hand sign, and the giant snake lunged forward. The battle erupted in the confined space of the cave. Sasuke and Sakura engaged the giant serpent while Jiraiya confronted Orochimaru directly. Percy found himself fighting alongside Naruto against smaller snakes that poured from cracks in the walls and floor. "We need to get out of here," Percy called to Naruto as they fought back to back. "This whole cave system could collapse." "There's another exit through the back tunnels," Naruto replied, forming a Rasengan that tore through multiple serpents. "But we'd be separated from the others." Percy made a split-second decision. "Lead the way. If Orochimaru wants you, our priority is keeping you safe. The others can handle themselves." Naruto hesitated, clearly torn about leaving his teammates. Then a section of the ceiling collapsed, nearly crushing Sakura before she leapt clear. "This way," Naruto shouted, darting toward one of the tunnel entrances. Percy followed, using water from his canteen to create a barrier of ice behind them that temporarily blocked pursuit. They raced through narrow passages, taking turns seemingly at random as Naruto navigated the labyrinthine cave system. "How do you know where we're going?" Percy asked as they ran. "Shadow clone reconnaissance," Naruto explained. "I sent clones to explore while we were resting earlier. Always have a backup plan. That's what Kakashi-sensei taught us." Athena's strategic thinking, Percy thought. It's already part of him. They emerged into a larger chamber with an underground stream running through it. Daylight filtered from an opening high above, a natural skylight formed by a sinkhole in the forest floor. "We can climb out there," Naruto pointed. Before they could move, however, the ground beneath them liquefied, transforming into a mass of writhing white snakes. From their midst, Orochimaru rose, his transformation further advanced. His eyes now glowed with golden light, and patterns like Greek letters crawled across his skin. "Did you really think I wouldn't anticipate your escape route?" he hissed, his voice resonating with unnatural harmonics. "I've studied you for years, Naruto Uzumaki. Your every habit, your every tendency." Naruto formed the hand sign for Shadow Clone Jutsu, but Orochimaru moved with divine speed, appearing directly before him and disrupting the technique with a precise strike to his solar plexus. Naruto gasped, doubled over in pain. "The divine essence responds to my call now," Orochimaru gloated. "Even that sealed within you recognizes a higher power." Percy charged, riptide slicing through the air toward Orochimaru's neck. The Sannin caught the blade between two fingers, seemingly unharmed by the celestial bronze. "Ah, the demigod," Orochimaru said, turning his attention to Percy. "A fascinating specimen, but ultimately obsolete. Why settle for half-divine when one can become fully god?" With a casual flick, he sent Percy flying across the chamber, crashing into the stone wall with bone-jarring force. Percy struggled to his feet, tasting blood in his mouth. "Naruto," he called out. "The focusing stone. Use it." With a desperate lunge, Percy tore the stone from around his neck and tossed it to Naruto, who caught it reflexively. "Focus on the connection between your chakra and the Nine Tails," Percy instructed. "Find the divine thread within it." Orochimaru laughed. "Amateur attempts at power. Let me show you true divinity." He raised his hands, and the chamber began to tremble. Cracks appeared in the walls as the very stone responded to his will. The underground stream rose into the air, forming into serpentine shapes that lunged toward Naruto. Percy intercepted the water attack, wresting control from Orochimaru. The effort was like trying to bend steel, the Sannin's newfound divine influence giving him unprecedented power over elements that should have been Percy's domain. "I can't hold him for long," Percy warned, straining against Orochimaru's control. "Naruto, now." Naruto clutched the focusing stone, his face contorted with concentration. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, gradually, a golden glow began to emanate from his body, different from the red chakra of the Nine Tails. It was warm, bright, like concentrated sunlight. "What is this?" Naruto gasped, looking at his glowing hands in wonder. Apollo's essence, Percy explained, still struggling against Orochimaru's power. God of the sun, of healing, of music and prophecy. Feel it, Naruto, it's part of you. Orochimaru's confident expression faltered slightly. Impossible. The divine essence is sealed behind the 9 tails. You can't access it directly. Watch me, Naruto growled. His eyes, normally blue, now shimmered with golden light. The whisker marks on his cheeks became more pronounced, not from the 9 tails' influence but from something deeper, more ancient. With a shout, Naruto slammed his palm against the ground. Golden energy spread outward in a complex pattern that resembled both a shinobi seal and ancient Greek letters. The pattern expanded rapidly, covering the entire chamber floor and climbing the walls. What are you doing? Orochimaru demanded, his voice tinged with the first hint of uncertainty. I don't know, Naruto admitted with a grin that was somehow both familiar and new, confident, radiant. But it feels right. The golden pattern completed its circuit of the chamber, and suddenly Percy felt a surge of power, not foreign like Orochimaru's stolen divinity, but complementary to his own demigod abilities. The water he had been struggling to control suddenly responded with eager enthusiasm, breaking free from Orochimaru's influence. Percy seized the opportunity, directing the water to form a sphere around the Sannin. Trapping him momentarily. Naruto, whatever you're doing, keep it up. Naruto nodded, his hands moving through unfamiliar patterns, not standard shinobi signs, but gestures that seemed to channel the golden energy flowing through him. I can feel it, he said in wonder. It's like knowledge I never knew I had. Words I never learned but somehow understand. He began to speak in ancient Greek, perfect, fluent phrases that Percy understood instantly. By the light of Apollo and the wisdom of Athena, I bind that which was stolen. The golden energy condensed around Orochimaru, counteracting the divine power he had absorbed. The Sannin struggled against the binding, his face contorted with rage. No, I will not be denied godhood. Not when I'm so close. You never understood what true divinity is, Percy said, joining Naruto in maintaining the containment. It's not just power. It's purpose, responsibility, connection. Pretty words from a half-blood, Orochimaru spat. Your divine parent abandoned you in your world, just as the gods abandoned their children in this one. Percy felt a flash of anger, but pushed it aside. Maybe, but at least I didn't try to steal what wasn't mine. The golden binding continued to tighten around Orochimaru, gradually extracting the divine essence he had absorbed. The crystal in his hand began to crack, unable to see. Contain the power being forced back into it. It's working, Naruto exclaimed, his control growing more confident by the second. But Orochimaru wasn't defeated yet. With a snarl of defiance, he bit down on his tongue, drawing blood that he smeared across a seal hidden on his wrist. If I cannot have this power, then neither will you. The chamber shook violently, and the ceiling began to collapse. Massive chunks of stone fell around them as the entire cave system started to cave in. He's collapsing the whole mountain, Percy shouted. We need to get out now. The binding around Orochimaru wavered as Naruto's concentration broke. The Sannin took advantage of the momentary weakness, transforming into a swarm of white snakes that slithered between the falling rocks and disappeared into cracks in the floor. This isn't over, his voice echoed as he vanished. Divine power will be mine, one way or another. Percy grabbed Naruto's arm. The skylight, it's our only chance. They raced toward the opening high above, dodging falling debris. The chamber was disintegrating around them, the underground stream now a raging torrent as natural barriers broke. We'll never make it by climbing. Nah, Naruto shouted over the roar of destruction. Percy looked at the rising water, then at Naruto. Do you trust me? We just met, Naruto pointed out. Fair point, Percy acknowledged with a grin. Let me rephrase. Do you want to live? Obviously. Then hold on. Percy grabbed Naruto's arm and concentrated on the surging water. With a gesture, he directed it to form a massive geyser beneath their feet, propelling them upward toward the opening above. They shot through the skylight just as the chamber collapsed entirely, landing roughly on the forest floor above. Behind them, the ground continued to cave in, trees tilting and falling as the land subsided into the hollow space below. For several minutes, they simply lay on the ground, catching their breath as dust and debris settled around them. The focusing stone still clutched in Naruto's hand gradually cooled, its glow fading. That, Naruto finally said, was the coolest thing ever. Percy couldn't help but laugh, despite the pain in his ribs and the seriousness of their situation. You have a strange definition of cool, says the guy who just surfed a geyser out of a collapsing cave. Naruto sat up, wincing slightly. The golden glow had faded from his skin. But something about him seemed different, more centered, more aware. How do you feel? Percy asked, sitting up as well. Naruto considered the question. Different, like I've been seeing everything through a foggy window, and someone just wiped it clean. He looked down at his hands. I can still feel it, the power. It's not gone, just settled. The divine essence, Percy nodded. You accessed it directly for the first time. It felt natural, Naruto said, sounding surprised. Not like when I use the Nine Tails chakra, which always feels angry and overwhelming. This was warm, familiar. It's part of you, Percy explained. Always has been, just sealed away. Naruto handed the focusing stone back to Percy. So what now? Orochimaru escaped, and were separated from the others. Percy secured the stone around his neck once more. Now we find our friends and get back to the village. You've taken the first step toward understanding your heritage, but there's still a lot to learn. And the dimensional breaches should stabilize somewhat now that you've consciously accessed the divine essence. That was the main cause of the instability, suppressed divine power trying to reconnect with its source. Naruto stood, offering Percy a hand up. You know, for a half-god fish guy, you're pretty cool. Percy took the offered hand with a smile. ND for a hyperactive ninja with divine ADHD, you're not so bad yourself. As they oriented themselves and began moving in the direction of Konoha, Percy felt a growing sense of optimism. The quest was far from over. Orochimaru was still a threat, the Akatsuki remained in pursuit of the tailed beasts, and the dimensional boundaries would need further stabilization. But in Naruto, he had found not just the focus of his mission, but a kindred spirit, someone who understood what it meant to carry both the burden and the gift of an extraordinary heritage. Together, they would face whatever came next. Demigod and Jinchuriki, sons of different seas but united by a shared destiny that transcended dimensions. Chapter 2 End.